Here's a fact that sounds impossible. An ancient human who survived to 15 could expect to live into their 70s. The single most common age an adult died back then wasn't 30, it was about 70. So why does the whole world believe they dropped dead young? Because one number has been lying to us for decades, and the truth it's hiding is darker than old age. That number is 30. In the Stone Age, life expectancy was about 30. And here's the strange part, it's not exactly false, it's technically true. It just doesn't mean what every textbook and documentary made you think. So let's take that number apart and see what's really inside it. Life expectancy at birth is just an average. Take everyone born, add up the age each person died, divide. Simple. But averages can lie right to your face. Watch this. Imagine a tiny village of 10 people. 5 of them die as small children before their 5th birthday, which, sadly, was completely normal back then. The other 5 live long, full lives all the way to 70. So what's the life expectancy of this village? Add it up. 5 deaths around age 2, 5 at 70, divide by 10. You get 36. Now look at that number again. Not a single person in that village died at 36. Half of them lived to 70. The average describes the life of literally nobody. 36 isn't telling you when adults died, it's screaming about how many babies did, and that is the whole secret of the Stone Age 30. It was never about grown-ups dropping dead young. It was about a brutal, heartbreaking number of children who never got to grow up at all. So the real question, the interesting one, isn't how long did ancient people live? It's this: if you survived childhood, how long did you live then? Survive to about 15, past the deadliest years, and you could reasonably expect to reach your 60s, even your 70s. That's not a small tweak. That's the difference between everyone died young and most adults grew old, which leaves one dark question hanging. Why were so many children dying in the first place? The answer comes in pieces, and some of them are the opposite of what you'd expect. The biggest killer was disease. But here's the part that flips the whole story upside down. The classic image is cavemen as filthy, plague-ridden, barely hanging on. The truth is closer to the reverse. Those small, roaming hunter-gatherer bands were actually protected from a lot of the worst diseases. Smallpox, measles, the plague. Those need crowds. They need lots of people packed close, constantly passing the bug along. Burn through a tiny group of 30, and the disease runs out of victims and dies with them. So when did the Great Plagues really take off? When we settled down. When we invented farming, built villages, then cities, crammed in close, lived next to our animals, and drank water we'd polluted ourselves. Farming gave us food, and handed disease the perfect breeding ground. Progress made some things much, much worse. Then there was childbirth, and it was a quiet catastrophe on 2 fronts at once. For the mothers, every single birth carried roughly a 1 to 2% chance of death. Sounds small until you remember women back then often gave birth 6, 8, 10 times. Stack those odds across a lifetime, and as many as 1 in 12 women could expect to die because of childbirth, and the babies they delivered faced the steepest cliff of all. Somewhere between 1/3 and half of all children died before reaching adulthood, most in the first year or 2 of life. Tiny, fragile bodies, no antibiotics, no vaccines, and 100 ways for things to go wrong. This, not weak adults, is the engine quietly dragging that famous 30 into the ground. It wasn't only disease. Accidents took a heavy toll, too. Falls, animal attacks, a hunt gone wrong. And for adult men in some groups, sheer violence between rival bands may have accounted for a startling share of deaths. But here's the factor almost everyone forgets, the quiet one. A cut, a scrape, a broken bone. In our world, a bandage, some pills, a cast, forgotten by next week. In their world, that same small wound could get infected, turn to sepsis, and kill you in days. There were no antibiotics, none. Right up to the middle of the 20th century, an infected scratch or a chest cold that slid into pneumonia could be a death sentence. So sit with this, because it's the heart of the whole thing. The gap between ancient death and modern survival is not a story about their bodies being weaker than ours. Their bodies were just like ours. It's a story about the tools. We have them. They didn't. And here's another myth worth breaking while we're at it. We tend to assume farming was a straight upgrade for human health. Settle down, grow food, everybody's better off. The bones say otherwise. Compare the skeletons of the last hunter-gatherers to the first farmers, and the farmers come out worse. They're shorter. They show more signs of physical stress and disease. Their teeth are wrecked by a soft, starchy grain diet. And in some places, more children died during the switch to settled life, not fewer. Scientists call it the Neolithic mortality crisis. The comforting story that life just got steadily, neatly better as civilization marched forward turns out to be a lot bumpier than that. Sometimes progress came with a bill attached, and believe it or not, even the bones fooled us for a while. When scientists dig up an ancient skeleton, they can read its age, but it gets blurry the older the person was. Telling a 45-year-old skeleton from a 65-year-old one is genuinely hard. So for decades, they just lumped every older adult into one vague pile labeled 50+, which means their numbers quietly erased the truly old. When researchers went back to famous skeleton sites with better methods, the same people turned out to have lived years longer than anyone first thought. The data itself had been hiding the elders. So what happened to the ones who made it, who survived the baby's graveyard, the plagues, the childbirth, the infected cuts? They got old, genuinely old. We dig up their skeletons and find exactly what you'd find in an old person today: worn-down teeth, arthritic joints, healed-over fractures, the wear of decades, and we don't even need bones. Look at hunter-gatherer people still living today, like the Hadza of Tanzania. Their camps are full of people in their 70s, some in their 80s. And those elders weren't spare mouths to feed. They were the most valuable people in the group, the living library of every plant, every season, every hard-won trick. And above all, they were grandparents. There's a beautiful idea scientists call the grandmother hypothesis. Humans are strange. Almost no other animal lives long after it can have babies. We do, by decades. Why? Because grandmothers who stuck around helped feed the children, mind the children, teach the children, and those children survived. Grandma was an evolutionary superpower, and here's the kicker. If ancient humans really all died at 30, evolution would never have bothered building a grandmother at all. You don't evolve a long old age that nobody ever lives to see. The simple fact that we have grandmothers is hard proof that, for a very long time, plenty of humans grew genuinely old. So remember that impossible-sounding number from the very start? Here is where it comes from. When researchers stopped using that poisoned average and instead asked, for an adult who survived childhood, what was the single most common age to die? The answer kept landing in the same place. Around 70, 70 to 72, not 30, not 40. The most ordinary ending for an ancient adult was the back half of their 70s. So let's bury the myth properly. Modern medicine did something incredible, but not the thing people think. We did not unlock some brand new, longer human lifespan. 70 was always on the table. Reaching old age was always possible for our kind. What we actually did was quieter and bigger. We didn't raise the ceiling of how long a human can live. We raised the floor. We dragged down the number of people who die as babies, who die in childbirth, who die from a wound or a fever we now wave away with a single pill. We didn't teach humans to live longer. We stopped so many of them from dying early, before they ever got the chance to find out how long they might have lived. And that is a far better story than the one we started with. The number 30 was never the age people died. It was the size of everything we hadn't figured out yet.